There was a publication that you had which talks about surveillance load, and it goes into talking about like very critical issues, and there's a like the topic is about the burden of surge of born by black and brown bodies. uh, would you mind elaborating your publication a little bit and talk about as to how it affected certain communities and what surveillance load is, just the basic as well?
Yes, thank you for asking.
Of course.
That paper was um, it was work that meant a lot to me. Um, I worked on it with Dr. Frank Pizzella at John Jay and my
Okay.
colleague Justice Evans. And so the paper came about because I took Dr. Pizzella's class on crime, race, crime, and intersectionality.
Okay.
Um, and at the same time, my policy portfolio began to expand to biometric surveillance and just surveillance technologies in general. And so, thinking a lot about the impact of these technologies and how, and then to touch back on DNA, how as a society we've had this collective memory loss of the substantive and personal information that DNA contains. And so the when the when CODIS was first developed, there were wrenching and heated debates on whether you could do it, how you could do it in a way that that was ethically viable, and that's why we have STRs. Even though we're finding out that STRs may code for things, that there was an effort to
Yes.
make sure that that there was the a process that was the least invasive possible
Correct.
when using this very, very personal and private information. And and with surveillance technologies, they 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 focus on our biometric identities, our uh, social identities, and as well as our geographic uh,
Hmm.
information. And so, for some people, their all aspects of their lives in those dimensions of their identity are constantly being captured by surveillance technologies. And when those technologies are being deployed, they're being deployed to high crime areas.
Right.
And that, so how do you determine what that is? And it's frequently where we send police. And research has shown that uh, when you send police and police make contact with people, that
Hmm.
you increase rates of arrest. And so rates of arrest are also what we use to determine if an area is a high crime area. And so you can see how there can be
Yes, 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 yes.
and so then you become a neighborhood becomes designated high crime. Then there's a reason for constant policing. There's a reason for more cameras. There's a reason for shot spotter microphones. There's a reason for gang databases. And the the focus of my paper was that we have a structurally racially biased criminal legal system that is driven by these types of data points. And then what ends up happening is that the historically over policed populations, primarily Black and Brown people, then become the focus and the bearer of all these multiple types of
Right.
technology. And so, what I was hoping to express was, on one hand, that uh, just the weight of it. So if you're getting all this data taken from you, and right now, when your image is taken from a camera, you don't get it back, and it lives somewhere, and it can be used for purposes that you'll never know.
Right.
And then it's not just the image of your face. It's also where you went between the hours of 7 and 10 last night. It's also the people that you're friends with. And um, and when you're targeting certain groups, then those individuals or those communities are going to have a disproportionate burden
Right.
of surveillance. And so that's one thing I wanted to express. And the other thing I wanted to express was how surveillance is, I wish I could remember. I got all heated.
It happens. It's been a while.
Okay, come on, brain. I can do this. Um, uh, uh, can't think of it right now, but um, I'll say that with surveillance load, anytime you have these technologies that take highly sensitive information, and this is true with DNA, it's true with all these other high-tech technologies, is that you need to think about who you're taking information from, how you're taking it, what you're using it for, and how you're going to secure that data
Right.
or expunge that data. We can always expunge as well.
Yes.
And who gets to make those decisions? And as someone who does policy work and who does a lot of work with commissions, the people who are the most greatly impacted by these technologies are never at the table.
No.
And how we are policed and how we are surveilled, that the answers to those questions have to come from some assessment of our normative values. And if the people who are establishing what those normative values are a very small pocket of the population, and we leave all of these other people out, and all of these other people are the ones who are being surveilled, then the policies will never be just.
Yes.
And so one of the recommendations we make in the paper is for the creation of community technology oversight boards. That would be kind of cheeky, composed of the Trinity. So it would be practitioners, and that would include people who serve the criminal legal system from all sides.
Right.
It would include the experts, so researchers and the people who have subject matter expertise. And it would also include stakeholders. So those are community stakeholders and, most importantly, impacted people. And we don't do a good job at all of making sure that we loop in the voices and the needs and the concerns of impacted communities when we develop policies. And so the idea is that if these three groups are working together, that they can make decisions about what is the public safety issue that's the most pressing for you. So one example of, and then if that public safety issue is the problem, what would fix it?
Right.
I bet a lot of the time, technology is not the thing that's
Not the answer.
and it may be making sure that people are housed, or making sure that there's after school programs, that there's so many things that we can do that would strengthen communities that we don't do. And technology, I see it often as a shortcut, the way out of doing the hard thing that requires people. And so if you do need a technology to address that problem, then selecting it together, creating a plan for how it will be deployed, establishing a metric for what is just or equitable. We have metrics for effectiveness, but we don't have metrics for how to assess if an outcome is just.
Right.
So establishing those, putting that to this plan, and then deploying it and constantly looking back and seeing, is this being implemented the way that we thought it was going to? Is it better? Is it worse? And there's always a chance to make a change. And there's always a chance to say no, and always time to pull something back. And we hear this narrative so often of, it's too big to fail. It's too big
Yeah.
to go back. We already spent the money. But if we had these processes at the front end, then we wouldn't be in the place where, oh, we've already spent all this money on robot dogs that nobody wants, but
Mhm.
we have them. And so now we're going to use them. And we're going to implement something that is going to alienate communities.
Yes.
Um, and so there in any aspect of how we live and how our government serves us, I think it's important for people to have access to the voices in power, that they have agency. So it's not just submitting public comments and never hearing back. It's being able to testify, being able to submit public comments, demanding a response, and for that government function in turn to be responsive and to integrate and consider and the 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 needs of our communities. And it's even better if our community members are the ones who are making those decisions.
Correct. Yes.